History doesn't repeat. The devil is in the details. Society, culture, humanity repeats patterns, but never history. We learn lessons, then spend time raising the next generation by overprotecting them from all the bad experience we suffered, forgetting all the wisdom we gained was from those difficulties. The problems your kids experience are what you would have faced if your parents had rushed to rescue you every time you had a little boo-boo. One generation's mistake, based on good intentions, will take 10 generations to relearn. Why? Because it takes 9 generations before society is so sick that they mouth useless rituals and words but lack any understanding of why the instructions make it hard for changes to be made fast. Those children raised by the World War II generation had parents that wanted their children to have all they did not. Problem was, they protected the children, denying them the wisdom at the same time. They continued to behave according to lessons they learned. Children having eyes as well as ears saw a problem. They can tell when all the right things you think you should say is opposite of how you behave. They may not know the word hypocrisy, but they can identify when what they see doesn't match with your words. Add to that the fact that those with authority and influence is slow to change. Around 10 to 13 years old, about time for puberty, parents' usual response of, "Because I told you so," is no longer going to be enough. You now have to treat them different by explaining why it should be done. Not that they just have to do it because you tell them to. If you don't, the older they get, the more damage to the relationship. How many times do you hear teenagers don't listen to parents anymore? It's not all teenagers that stop listening. If yours isn't, maybe you should consider, have you been consistent in what you say and do? Your actions towards others and your arrogance to demand submission instead of respect might be the reason why. What I find most humbling is the original mistake was made not from selfishness, but caring for the children. The generation that is in their 30s by 2017 had parents that were so dysfunctional, they still relied on their parents to rescue them. What happens when that generation needs a rescue? When things are so bad they could use help and their parents lack the ability to emotionally or physically throw out a lifeline. Many of my generation don't even see the sad irony that while they complain about their parents not being able to help, that we are creating a worse scenario for our children. Yet we insist we are not to be blamed. It's society's fault. Fact is, the Constitution, the institutions, still exist as they always have. We have so lost ourselves we can barely understand why the safeguards exist that hinder us from making fast change. We found ways to go around because it's too hard and difficult to convince society your ideas, wants, and desires are good for all. Mostly because they usually aren't. So in frustration, the youth today that see dysfunction everywhere attack the things that have kept this country safe. To them, they are not to blame for bad things. Their parents, leaders, and role models all say they aren't responsible for it. They see violence as the only way to regain a semblance of control over their lives, yet they never lost it. They just haven't been taught that while bad things do happen, you can't undo the past, but you can learn about and do better in the future, and hopefully recognize warning signs of behavior in others that would make you avoid those types in the future. To me, this also explains why terrorism and mass murder is on the rise. When you are told daily you're at the mercy of everyone else, at some point in frustration you're going to lash out, and what better way to regain a feeling of control than to take the lives of others? Besides, we are told constantly, it's society's fault. Far easier to commit evil acts when those you are attacking are reduced to a label. It's only after a tragedy, for a little while, we see the faces, but we soon forget because everywhere we look, the message is anything bad you experience is not your fault. Things are bad in 2017, yet I'm unsure if we have really hit bottom yet. It took both a Great Depression and World War II to finally make enough people wake up and act. Yet I am sure eventually that generation will rise. I may not live to see it. The United States may not no longer hold the promise. Someplace else might have to recreate it. But it will happen. It usually does. I can only hope when it does, they will have the wisdom to do what the Continental Congress did in 1776. But maybe be wiser and add even more protections to delay the day when a generation will slip and sends us in the wrong direction. It's not much, but I want to be a part of laying the groundwork even if my name is never associated with it. Because these ideas weren't created by me, I just learned them from literature and people in my life that I listened to. It's enough to know I tried my best not to make things worse. I'll let a higher power judge if the good outweighs the bad done by me.